Thanks a lot, Luke. Of course, we need to take the trouble out of the way in the beginning of the session.
Of
So
course.
thanks a lot for joining this session. I'm really excited to be here. It's my first time speaking at a virtual conference, so I'm excited about trying that out. Um, I'm going to talk about AI enhanced leadership. So how do we save time and how do we lead better with Copilot? I've done a lot of Copilot adoption projects. I've worked with a lot of different companies on Copilot and AI, and this seems to be sort of a divisive topic, leading with AI, because on the other one hand, some people say should of course use AI for everything, but there's also the whole human factor and cautiousness about not letting AI take over the leadership and um, the the interaction between two people. So I decided to dive into that and work with some customers on how can I actually make this a good thing? How can we make sure that we lead with curiosity, with genuinity, uh, and with our own emotional intelligence, and just let Copilot do what it's good at. So that's what I'm trying to bring into the session, some practical examples and some examples of what I've worked with out in the companies. So my name is Fischer Carlsen. I'm a Copilot specialist and managing consultant at Delegate, which is a consulting firm primarily focused on Microsoft in Denmark. So we work across almost the entire Microsoft stack. My own history is with SharePoint, back from SharePoint 27 up through Office 365, Microsoft 365, and now lately with Copilot for Microsoft 365 and Copilot agents, and working with that a lot. I've worked primarily with Copilot by chance with some of the larger banks in Denmark, with the public sector in Denmark as well, and I love working in the public sector and in the financial industry because they merge sort of the two things I also love merging in my life, or in my work life, which is employee experiencing, making sure our colleagues have a great employee experience while still maintaining a high security posture and a high compliance level. Trying to get those to merge is not always easy, but that's sort of what I'm trying to focus on in everything we do, and especially with AI coming in, and at least for the European viewers, the EU AI Act and what's around the world around that. So we need to have a focus there as well. But before we jump in, why is this a relevant topic? So I looked into some Gartner surveys and Gallup surveys and also Microsoft's own survey about where are we in leadership, because I had an idea just from my customers that leadership is strained. And if we look into this, the 96% of leaders asked by Gallup actually said that strategic thinking is critical. And of course it is, but almost none of them have time for it. That's kind of a crucial point to overcome, because if we don't have strategic thinking in our leadership circles in the companies, then we will see companies crumble over time because they are not moving forward. They are working retroactively. So, how are we actually making sure that we overcome this hurdle, that we can find time for that importance? Second one is that only 27% of managers feel engaged, and that sort of ties together with the last number, which is 45% of middle managers report burnout. So if we have managers that are not engaged in their work, or they are not engaged with their people, then we don't have good leadership with or without AI. So we need to figure out how do we overcome this. I mean, our businesses are run by people, and if those people aren't being managed, they don't feel their manager's presence, then we have issues in our companies, and then we don't have a sustainable practice. But before going into the session, I just want to make sure that nobody hears me saying that we should let AI lead our people, that they should be led by Copilot. I want us to be better leaders with Copilot, because nobody wants this. Nobody wants to look at a sleeping manager with an AI asking us the questions at the one-to-ones, trying to help us develop and all those kind of things. We want to interact with people. We want to use our manager to reflect with our manager and those kind of things. So just make sure, and that's what I focus on in this session, that we support our management with AI. We don't replace it. And another thing is, one of the big hurdles for managers in this day and age is time. We don't have enough time to manage our people, to manage processes, projects, and so on. And that sort of often is time taken away from the people because they sort of can run themselves, but they shouldn't. We need to help, we need to guide and assist and manage. And when we implement AI, we just need to focus on Bad meetings with AI is still bad meetings. Processes with no values with AI is still processes without value. So first step is, of course, to clean up even without AI. I see examples out there of processes or chatbots or so on being built for things that shouldn't have existed in the first place. Where AI comes in and helps us catch some time or in the meetings that actually have value, because those we should participate in, we should spend time on them, but we shouldn't spend time on recapping them, for instance. We shouldn't spend time finding information to prepare ourselves for those meetings. So just to make sure that we are removing the things that doesn't make sense in our workday before we start with AI, or at least in parallel with working with AI. So in this session, I want to focus on how we get time to lead, how we don't get time for more busy work. And I've focused on 3 core elements or 3 themes, which is what I've also worked with my customers on. These are the 3 themes that are easy to adopt, easy to take in, and we don't risk it take over our management if we are just cautious about it. So think ahead, that's the strategic thinking. Support our team, make sure we are there for our team, we support them, we help them reflect, and then follow through on our promises, on our assignments during the day and during the week. Those 3 themes we'll start diving into now. And the first is time to think. So the constraint here is mostly mental bandwidth. So how do we think strategically when we are pressured for time, when we are pressured for that mental bandwidth that makes us look beyond what we're doing? Most managers can sit down and sort of do a quick competitor analysis and figure out what are the biggest competitors in our field, what are the biggest worries in our field, because we sort of know by heart. But what about all the emerging? What about new tech coming in and taking over some of our fields? What about disruptors in the market that we haven't noticed because we are only focused on the key competitors? What about all those things we could learn from other industries as well? How do we do that? Well, there are sort of 2-3 ways. Either we ignore it, we spend a lot of time and resources trying to investigate, or we use AI. And that's where I want to take our first step. So trying to expand our perspective beyond what's just obvious to us, what we already know. So figuring out what's in our industry, what's in our surroundings that we don't know, but we should either take care of, we should strategize around, or we should learn from. I had a customer in the manufacturing industry. They sort of had an idea of the 3 biggest competitors because they had 3 very big companies they were competing with. But what we did in one of these Copilot sessions was back when the researcher agent was first released to our customers. We started working with the researcher agent, trying to figure out, so what are not the biggest competitors in the market, but what are all the other competitors in the market who are expanding into our market, who are doing something that could disrupt our market, all those kind of things. And what they did realize was they found one competitor that was actually that wasn't a competitor previously, but now they had a division. They made a subdivision that was going into this market and starting to become a competitor. And rather than having to deal with that once they grew that division enormously, they could now strategize around that. At the same time, they also figured out one of their sort of mid-range clients were starting to sort of insource some of these manufacturing themselves, starting to build full supply chain here. And they could also now work a little bit around their customers, so their customers are starting to move. Can we do something to make it more attractive to stay with us rather than do it yourself? So I thought that was just a good key moment for me to figure out we can actually do something around strategies here. And the important tools we have in our playbook here is, of course, the researcher agent, which can do deep research, and then Copilot notebooks, which I'll show in just a second. So what we do first is, if we go in here into my demo environment, let's see here. So we go into the researcher agent, and for those who might not know what the researcher agent is, it's an agent that makes sure that we think deeper, we think more thoroughly around these kind of things. It can go do research, evaluate its own research, and then do further research if it's missing something from the initial research. What we'll do first is figure out, so I need to know more, it needs to know more about me. and it can ask me some questions before it starts its research. Just for the sake of time, I'll say go ahead now. Of course, you should fill in this detail and make sure you give it as much information as possible. And this is where you need to spend a little bit time feeding it as much information as possible. But now the research will start. We can actually follow along here. And I don't want to have you sit here for 5 minutes just looking at research run. So while this is running, while this is identifying, and what I've asked it to identify is actually here in. So we're preparing a strategy for Floral Peak, my fictive company. We want to expand our solution to use newest technologies, products, processes, and so on. And we want to figure out what we want to know who our competitors are, both established and emerging, and what each competitor poses to our organization, threat poses to our organization. We also want to get inspired by all other companies. And while this is running, you can see it starts to look through different things here. Then the next part here is, of course, also looking into other industries. Because what we can do now that we get some extra resources to help us with strategizing, we can look into other industries. Because if we are in manufacturing, then it might make sense to look into what are retail doing on some emerging technology or some changes in behavior. And that's where we go out and sort of make Copilot look into those emerging technologies. So we can here identify 3 practices from other industries with potential application in manufacturing for supply chain and retail distribution. So here we define, we want to look at other industries. What are they doing that could apply to our own scenario here for the specifics of supply chain or retail distribution? And of course, we could do this for everything. And this also goes into our strategy, because now we can maybe not steal, but we can borrow and we can get inspired by other industries in how we devise our strategy. But then we come to the next challenge with building our strategy, because what we are doing is we are mostly building a strategy a certain way. We have been taught how to build a strategy, how to formulate and communicate a strategy. And the problem is a lot of the strategies that comes out are just buzzword bingo from a corporate, from leadership, because we are so caught up in all those brilliant ideas we found in our strategy that we don't really see that this makes no sense at all to our colleagues on the floor. And we have so many examples of companies devising must-win battles, the North Star, the Lighthouse projects, all those kind of things. And it means nothing to us. Just to take an example, a good one that's for all consultancy firms, say we need something around customer, either customer first or customer intimacy. And yeah, of course, we want customer intimacy. We want customers first. But what am I doing as a colleague? What do I need to change to make this strategy come true? Because customer intimacy, well, I feel I'm communicating well. I'm creating this relationship with my customers. So what am I doing different? But this is where we need to change and tell what is the behavior shift we need to do. So just an example, within 24 hours, every ticket gets a personal summary. That's a culture shift. That's a behavioral shift that will actually change towards our target. And then we need to enable our colleagues as well. And this is where, when we have devised this strategy, then we need to help, or to let Copilot help us create something that's understandable for our employees. So here we can actually tell Copilot, because we're so caught up in what we did and so proud of what we did, and it might look good on the wall, on the PowerPoint and so on, but we need some help to turn the strategy into observable frontline behaviors that they should be communicated to understandably and easy to execute, and add a list of prerequisites, because now we can actually let Copilot help us do this in a good way. And here's where we can go into building one of the notebooks, because notebooks is just a way of collecting different notes, collecting all the information needed so we can work with this. And when we go into work with a strategy, so if I go and build a new notebook, say strategy 2026 here, and I want to add our 2026 strategy and competitor analysis, create the notebook. Now I have the references in here. And what I can do then is, once it has added that reference, I can ask it to convert this into something usable. So if I run this prompt, it will look into my strategy and figure out what is it that we can actually, oh, I got the wrong prompt. Just do this again. Just a second. Should of course be a few problems. So here we go. Turn the strategy into 5 observable frontline behaviors. And it didn't catch my, just take here. Then we'll go in and devise this and figure out how can we help communicate this, how can we do this in a good way. So here are 5 observable frontline behaviors. And of course we need to adapt this afterwards to our company to help our colleagues understand this and to make sure it also ties well into our strategy. But here we can actually help our colleagues understand the strategy we have devised. Perfect. Next theme for this session is time to support our team. And this is one of the themes where we need to be cautious, because this is where AI could easily take over how we handle our team, how we deal with them, instead of just helping us prepare. But as I wrote here, show up prepared for a genuine conversation. So how do we do that? And there are 2 areas where I look into this. So the first one is prepare for the conversation with a colleague. And we have several touch points with our colleagues as managers. One of them is a one-to-one, and they might run flawlessly and it's just a good, easy conversation. But let's say I had a colleague who actually struggled with something where, even though we have had these conversations, we couldn't really overcome the struggle. So for instance, I have my colleague Frodo here. He is imaginative, so no overshared information. Has been struggling with opening dialogues with new customers. We have identified that over the past one-to-ones, and we can't really figure out how do we help him do this better. How do we help him with that? So what Copilot can do, instead of writing, we shouldn't write a sort of question and answer sheet to him. We shouldn't write the entire conversation, but help me with 2 good reflective questions to support that upcoming one-to-one and help him improve. And because this is happening inside Copilot, we are in our secure boundary. I can even share my one-to-one notes with Copilot, so it has a better understanding of what we're actually talking about and what struggle he actually has. So here. So if we go into Copilot here, I can attach the notes about him. I have those in a loop, of course, because I follow that. And then it will start trying to devise those 2 good reflective questions. And here it's just important that I use those reflective questions. Of course, make sure they are in my tone and I do it still with genuinity. But when I've asked this question, it's very important I don't focus very strongly on having to say both. But I just ask that one and hopefully get that conversation running. And then I use my own curiosity, my own emotional intelligence to help that along the way. Because when he tells something, then of course it's the old management virtues of going into that conversation and trying to extract as much information and help guide him along the way. So an easy way to sort of get rid of that blank sheet when we are preparing for a one-to-one. And the next one we also might want help to, that's the tough conversation. And we have those as managers or we have them once in a while. And I don't think very many managers feel very comfortable or very good about taking those tough conversations. So it's anywhere from we have to tell somebody they have been underperforming for quite a while to we actually have to let half of the department go, or anywhere in between. And we cannot make this better with Copilot, and probably not, and we cannot write a script for how to do that, but we know what to say. But what we can do, and what, at least for some of the managers I work with, what the fear is actually is being unprepared for that conversation that follows. So how are my employees going to react? How do I deal with that reaction? And this is where we can get Copilot to help us prepare a little bit. So in this prompt, we decided to let James go due to consistent poor performance. He was well liked and social glue in the team. So I fear the reaction from the team. You act as, and then I'll set in a persona that matches some of my team members. And of course, I can run this several times with different kind of team members. And you act as that team member. And react as them asking the questions or throw the comments that they would feel. And if we go into this again, here, see, then I can throw that in here. And of course, I'm not going to get prepared for everything my colleagues will throw at me. I'm not going to be prepared for every question, every comment. But this can actually make me reflect on what might come and help me prepare for those 40, 60% or whatever it might be. And also just give me some comfort, or give me some, make sure I'm a little more comfortable in that conversation, can take it with a little more ease. Of course, they are never easy, these conversations, but I feel better and more prepared here, because as we can see, what exactly do you mean by poor performance? And with some more comments to that, they don't feel poor performance. So how would I react to that? And that can help a ton going into that conversation. That's sort of the or the one-on-ones and those kind of conversations that go on day to day. Hopefully not the tough conversation, but the other stuff. But we also have these development dialogues, or whatever they're called in your company. In Denmark, it's mostly mus-samtaler, which is development conversations as well. But where we once a quarter, half a year, every year, sit down with the employee, give them some more structured feedback, evaluate goals, set new goals, those kind of things. And this is where we can actually also get some help with Copilot, both in preparing, but this is one of the instances where we can also get help along the way. So in the development dialogue, as I've seen them from more companies, they're generally structured in, we need to give some feedback, we need to give better feedback, and this is where Copilot can help. So improve my own feedback. That could be, I'm of course writing my own feedback with my words, and then I'm just asking Copilot, how to improve this to be more actionable, to be more factual, or to follow a framework if we have that in company that's right for us. So again, it's my feedback, but it's just improved and removed if I have some tension in that. Maybe it's a project where I had to take the blame for a project going bad, and I've sort of had some of that frustration into the dialogue. Then I can get help removing that, at least from the written feedback in that dialogue. Help set clear goals. I don't know how many of you have tried that, but having that goal of improve this area over the next 3 months. Well, what does that mean? What does improve mean? How much do we improve? How do we measure that? So, and this is where we are in the dialogue. We are starting to fill out whatever form it might be that also needs to go to HR. So we are writing down the goals, and they might be very fluffy and might not be very actionable. And then we can ask Copilot to help us create more clear goals. And then supporting action. So how do I support these goals for my employees? I've sat in a company with 14,000 employees. I didn't know all of the training programs, all of the training partners, the mentorship programs, everything that was in there. I simply didn't know because it was so massive and there was so much. So instead of trying to do that and instead of having to go back with that, with those goals, figure out how can we support, come back to my employee, we have that present in the development dialogue, and actually put these supporting actions and supporting help right in there. To do that, I've created an agent. It lives inside Word. So if you see here we have a very simple employee development dialog form. I've seen them often be in Word and PDF and so on. And a good thing here is we actually have our Copilot available in the site. So if I go in here, I would like to add an agent because I've worked with a simple agent to help me do that, the employee quarterly dialog. And what I can do now is, so if we start with the feedback here, so I've written Proto has been doing well during the past quarter, but still struggles a lot with opening customers. So if I add that to Copilot here, add that to Copilot here, there it is. Of course, the demo isn't with me right now. Help me. So we'll just do it in another way. Help me improve the feedback in section 1. And I've defined in this agent how do we I'll just try to close this and open this again. And this is the world of working with Copilot. It just doesn't always work when you need it to. So it's opening here. Let's see. Can we get it started? Can we also get it to take this in? Help me improve section. At least it's working. What we should be able to is, of course, just reference this directly. So what we can normally do is down here we can say add selected text. Doesn't work now. I don't know why. But what you can see here is I've actually asked this agent to always use fifth framework, which is something I got from an old employer, which is a way of consolidating this feedback or writing this feedback in a good way. And what we get here is a revised feedback that's based on the feedback I've done, which I can easily insert into this. Of course, I need to read it through. I need to make sure that I can stand behind everything that's in here. It has added some text. Has it added everything I wanted, or has it added something I should remove? But here, a quick way, and you can put in any feedback framework you want, but just defining those rules, and for the company, define the rules of what does good feedback look in our company. Next one is if we go down to review goals from the last quarter. So I can see that he had a goal of renewing Norcraft for at least 1 year contract. Oh yeah, did he actually do that? Well, I have Copilot in here to help me figure that out. And of course, we're still in that phase before we go into the dialogue itself. We're still just reviewing this, preparing the form for going into that dialogue. So here I can say, how did the Norcraft deal go? And I remember we talked about that at a one-on-one. So I'll just go into the one-on-one notes and ask it to, how did it go? It will search through. And I can see here it was renewed for 2 years. So yeah, I can say this was actually achieved. And I can also say, where was it? Renewed for 2 years. Here, good. So quickly, I have all the elements ready, so I don't have to search through this. I don't have to remove myself from the development dialog form and to figure out if he actually fulfilled this goal. I can just take it right in here. And the next one is then setting goal for the next quarter. So let's see here. So goal is improve skills to close 5 new customers. So we still want to do that. We still want him to be better at closing new customers. But what we do is just write it as a bad goal, close new customers. That's not well enough. So if we again go into our agent here and we say, help me improve goal 1. So the improved goal is, and here I've set it to be in smart format. So that's the way the goal should be set. And we'll actually write it in the right way. So here, instead of having this very vague goal, I'll have a goal, acquire 3 new customers by the end of Q4 through structured outreach and improved follow-up practices. It's great. Now we actually have a clear, measurable goal. We know when we measure on it, we know how many he should reach out to. And I've even asked the agent to help me figure out, are there any supported actions that needs to be done? So we can say here, weekly coaching sessions focused on cold outreach, peer shadowing opportunities with colleagues, so go into that. And just to help guide me as a manager in how do I help my colleague. And the last one was then, are there any resources in my company that can help Frodo here become a better manager? So what training opportunities do we have to support Frodo in goal 1? And now I've linked this agent to look into not only our own internal training, but also into our training partners' training catalog. So we'll go in to look at that. So there's some sales and marketing essentials training. There's some presentation skills for sales professional, objection handling, and communication techniques. And I've said here it should be very focused on what's the purpose, what's the time commitment, the price, why is it relevant towards him. And what we can do here is then, okay, so I could actually say you should take this objection handling communication course. We want to pay for that. It's typically 1 to 2 days. That's fine. So we put that in as an action towards this goal. And this is something where previously I would have to go back out of the development dialogue, figure out what we could do, which courses we have, what is possible, go back to Frodo, instead of getting that development dialogue done and ready to actually be actionable the moment we step out of the door. Good. So back to the slides. Here. Good. And the last one is time to follow through. So as managers, we are often, or very many managers I see are often running around, going from meeting to meeting to meeting. Please try to remove some of them if they are not relevant, but also being caught at the coffee machine at the hall with, oh, can you just help me do that? Or yes, sure, I'll just follow up on that. And we say so many things during the day. I was doing Copilot training for an executive management team. And I got a question that caught me a little bit off guard, because one of the execs asked me, can Copilot help me remember all the things I promised during the day? And I just love the courage in that question, because he had to admit towards the rest of the executive management team that he didn't remember everything he promised during the day. So how do we do that? I was like, well, yes, of course, it caught me a little off guard, so it took a little while. But yeah, of course, we can do that as long as Copilot has the information ready at hand and can see that information. So I came up with the slogan Copilot, your nagging assistant since 2023, because Copilot is actually good at this kind of stuff. As long as it has information, we can go into scheduled prompts and making sure that it will tell us everything we forgot we should do. But it does require some change in our behavior, because Copilot needs to know what we have promised, what we're doing, what we should be doing. And unfortunately, I cannot have a small Copilot microphone capturing everything I'm doing during the day. When somebody invent that, I'll have it sitting here. But until then, we have some behavioral changes we need to do. So first of all, we actually need to transcribe all meetings. We need to do it with consent, of course, but we need to transcribe all meetings. Be very clear on why are we using that, what are we doing it for. It can, for some meeting, feels a little bit intimidating to have it transcribed, but that's, by my experience, it's just a matter of getting used to it. You soon forget it's running in the background of meetings, and it's just really pleasant to have. When we transcribe all the meetings, then we make sure it captures all the actions we should be doing afterwards. Clearly identifying the responsibles on tasks from the meetings. So instead of in the meeting identifying, so we should reach out to Hannah to figure out the contract. Well, who are we? Who in the meeting is responsible for doing that? Making sure to say Tom needs to reach out to Hannah. I mean, it's just common practice. You would do that in a normal meeting minute. Tell who would do what. We also need to tell Copilot the same. Have all oral agreements sent in Teams or Outlook, and it seems a little bit cumbersome, but it's actually very easy. So when Thomas catches me in the coffee machine and asks, "Can you reach out to this customer?" The answer is just yes, of course. Can you just ping it on Teams so I have it there? It takes 3 seconds for Thomas to actually ping me on Teams, and then that's done and over with, and Copilot can catch those agreements we have done during the day instead of me having to remember all of this. And then we come to the Copilot part, do daily review of promises. So we use Copilot to give us an overview, to keep overview of what we have promised, what we should deliver upon. And here we go into the scheduled prompts. And I know they're not perfect and we need to reset the scheduled prompts every 15 days, but it's just a good practice to get into, and those 15-day limit of how long a scheduled prompt can run for, it will get better. And then we just have a good way of working with it. So what I'm doing there is scan last day's meetings or last week's, whatever we might prefer, meetings, Teams chats, channel messages, and email for any task I'm explicitly asked to do. I'm saying explicitly because otherwise any task that's in there that might just resonate a little bit with I should do it, then that will turn up on that list and I'll get a little bit overwhelmed. So task I'm explicitly asked to do, provide in a table with actions, description, recommended next step, deadline if applicable, and source. So I have that good overview of what should I actually be doing or what have I promised during the day. And again, let's just go into that. Here we are. So scan last day's meetings, Teams, and we can run this. And of course, with scheduled prompts, if you haven't worked with those, you need to run it once, and then you can set it up to be a scheduled prompt. But here's the summary, so I can see I need to push Tom for town hall materials, and was Arvin who asked me about that. Recommended next steps. When is the deadline for doing this? And also, where's the source? It's actually in an email, so I can go straight into that email and have a look at that. And you can see there are a lot of things down here that I need to do, and that just came in via emails, via Teams chats, and it's a good mix of everything, and from meetings as well. And once I've done that, I just go up here and say schedule this prompt. I've done that already, but starts tomorrow at, maybe we say I want it in the morning at 6 a.m. in the morning, so it's there when I meet in at the office every day except Saturday and Sunday, and run for as long as I can set it to. When we do that, then I will meet into. I'll meet into exactly this overview. Come on. Every morning. See here, it ran yesterday as well because I've had it running for a little while, and here it's been running as well for the things that was relevant at that time. Now I make sure with these small behavioral changes that I'll actually follow up on what I promise my colleagues I will do. But please remember, all these time gains, all these things that become easier, if we don't convert that efficiency into presence towards our colleagues, into having these conversations, spending the time on our colleagues, then we just do more busy work, then we just get better at being absent. So whatever you're doing more efficiently with AI, with Copilot, be very cautious about what do you actually spend that time on. Because if we save 5 minutes, but that just means I'm scrolling Facebook or X or something like that, then it's not saved time, because then I just wasted it on something else. So be mindful of what you're using this for. And then to circle back to make sure that we have this, Copilot is not a replacement for management. It should help challenge us on the way we communicate, on the way we work with our colleagues, but it should challenge me on the way I'm doing it so I can do it better. It should help us reflect and help us give the reflection questions, and it should help us refine. So refine what we're doing, make sure that strategy is refined to actually also go out to our workers. I've had a lot of these dialogue where it is, well, don't we become dumber with AI? Don't we become less reflective and so on with Copilot? And I think it's a lot about of matter about how we work with Copilot. Just a small example outside of management, I'm doing a lot of thought leaderships or these presentations like this, and I don't want Copilot to make this presentation for me, or I don't want Copilot to make the content of this presentation for me. But what I did was I took a stroll with AI in the ear, talking to it, and I'd ask it to, you are not generating any content, any knowledge whatsoever. You are interviewing me about the subject, and then you help me structure that into a good presentation, because that way I was the one using my brain and used my knowledge. It's genuine what I come out with, and it's the same for management. So if we turn this prompt around of instead of saying how instead of having it write things to your colleagues, then have it interview you and structure your own thoughts into that key message. And AI should give you time to lead, not time for more busy work. We looked into how do we think ahead with Copilot, how do we support our team with Copilot, and how do we follow through with Copilot. All of the things, I hope it's something you can do. I'll post everything on LinkedIn over the next couple of days as well, where the prompts will be as well. So you have them there and you can rewatch the session. Otherwise, if there are any questions, let me know.